Hi everyone, Thomas here. Today I'd like to talk about becoming agile. Agile is a common thing in the business lexicon today, and it has two aspects. One is agile as a noun, meaning agile project management. The other being agile as an adjective or adverb, meaning that you're like our friend there in the picture, able to adapt to your environment quite quickly, and it causes you no great amount of distress. It's okay for change to occur. So today we're going to talk about the second one, which is the chameleon. There's another video that I'll talk about the process of agile, the noun, on how to do agile project management. And so, first of all, the reasons why do we do it, when you might be ready to do it, how to do it, and what you need to do to change the culture within your organization, not within a project team, within your organization. And that is the big challenge. So, the reason people do this, the reason people want to do this globally in the companies I interact with, from Asia to Europe to Africa to South America, North America, it really doesn't matter. It's global economy, and as a result of that, change is diverse, and because of the technology, it's rapid. My students tell me in many companies, for example, that when I ask them, how often does your world change? The answer is weekly, which means that your processes need to support that level of change. So, speed and anticipation. Part of the way to keep control over yourself is to be able to anticipate what's coming rather than to be hit in the nose with it every morning as you walk in the front door. It's not to say that you will always know what's coming, but it will reduce the amount of change that you feel. So if you're looking for new products or services or application in weeks rather than months, in rapidly changing markets, technology, culture, business, geography, where you're subject to potentially high failure rates. For example, a customer who does not know what they want and does not speak your IT language. And especially in this economy, short life expectancy, meaning that the products that you produce will probably not have a shelf life more than 2-3 years, something like that. And so in that environment, what Standish found in their survey in 2014 was that about 60% of projects failed. And as you can see from the chart on the left, cancellation because they were not envisioned properly to begin with. And so when they got to a management level, and for example, the frequent change had happened, the business model looked different than when the project was envisioned, the customer changed its mind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So many projects, as you can see, canceled, failed, and then succeeded. Very small, I shouldn't say small percentage. It's too large of a failure rate. And so over on the right-hand side are the reasons why projects failed from the same report. Poor planning, too many changes, no executive support, and so forth. The things that the agile adjective or the agile noun are trying to get at are the requirements and resource issues primarily, uh, for a variety of reasons. Far too detailed for today. So if you're ready, when you're ready, you need to lose the fear of change. It's built into us. Um, from birth, we learn to fear. Some of the fears are genetic, self-preservation, for example, but many of the fears are learned fears, and I'll talk about that a little more in a moment. You need to increase the creativity because you don't know what's coming. And so as a result, when the market changes or the technology changes or your management changes or your customer bank changes, you need to be able to be creative to take what you already have in place and modify it, adjust it, so that you don't have to recreate every single time a new product, feature, service, function. And to do this, you need to empower your staff, and that's one of the big problems for many companies. In societies that are particularly rigid, or as Hofstede would say, high power distance, like South Korea, empowering staff runs contrary to the grain of the organization. And so it's quite difficult, but it's essential to do this. So the little guy on the left there is a picture of the metaphor that I'd like you to think about. As children, generally we haven't learned the fears. Generally, we're not terribly concerned about someone critiquing our creativity. And you feel empowered because you don't know any better. And so it's a handy shortcut for the concept that I wanted to describe to you. And for fear, Tanser did some work back in 2008, and the things that he said, let me move this around a little bit here for a second, were flying, heights, clowns, I don't know, intimacy, death, rejection, people, snakes, and failure. The two I would like you to think about are rejection and failure, especially in a fast-moving environment where change is rapid and people have to adjust and come up with new ideas quickly. There will be ideas that are simply not as good as others. And how you respond to those as a culture, how people are trained to accept critique, but people are also trained not to criticize. And it's more than just a linguistic difference. Again, Hofstede and many people who have studied culture, different countries, for example, in the United States, criticism is far more acceptable than it would be in Japan. Critique is something that's essential for creativity. And so those are the two I would like for you to think about today with regard to specifically Agile. And as you can see, the little guy on the left, a picture to represent the fear of heights, which is a learned fear. And then over on the right, let me show you a quick video. This one you might find intriguing.
Carlsberg social experiment. Carlsberg, a Danish beer brewing company, conducted this social experiment and then turned it into a successful marketing gimmick. They tricked innocent couples at a cinema in Brussels to test how gutsy humans can be when faced with an unfamiliar situation. At the cinema, 148 men dressed as bikers filled the entire stadium, and only 2 seats available were right in the middle. Carlsberg representatives were present to record the exchange that took place. Many of the couples that walked in were shocked to see the crowd, and some of them even responded by saying that this wasn't what they had paid for. Many couples were daunted by the bikers and turned away. Whether this happened, the bikers showed no reaction. However, every time a couple awkwardly shuffled between the bikers and claimed the 2 seats in the middle, everyone broke out in applause and offered the pair a bottle of Carlsberg beer. The reactions of the couples were of genuine shock and pleasure. This is just another experiment to show that humans are creatures of habit and are fearful when approached.
So you can see from the video, this was done last century. And the idea is that to fit in, um, to feel like you're a part of the group is a particularly challenging thing for global businesses when you have a diverse workforce that's spread over 6 or 8 time zones. Culturally, it's difficult. Disciplinary, it's difficult. Uh, Focus, vision, strategy, what you're measuring, the metrics, all of that stuff tends to divide rather than to consolidate. And so this is a big issue for becoming more agile, especially when you have to empower those people who are in the south of India and you happen to be in Berlin. So I think it's a particularly interesting and stimulating environment, but it's not for the faint of heart. So, what happens first? You need to build an agile culture. Leaders embrace the change first. That means the CEO, the chairman of the board, from the top down. This is not a bottom up exercise based on what I've seen companies actually try and do in practice. Leader jumps first, just like the image, the metaphor in the picture. You have to be in front. You have to show that you're not afraid of change and you're ready to embrace it wherever it may take you. Communicate frequently with everyone because change is frequent. The need to adjust everything is frequent. Empower people and protect them. If you protect them, they will feel more inclined to risk change. Inspire passion for change and happiness, that it's important to feel satisfied, it's important to feel happy, it's important to have a life away from work, that you need all of that for balance in a fast changing environment. First, the picture. This is a picture of Marines who go through training to be prepared for rapid change on the battlefield. Here you see them lying in frigid water after they've done a marathon run, and you can see it's somewhat painful. When you have projects that take too long for your market conditions, you need to prepare your team just like these guys are being prepared. It is not going to be always pleasant. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be difficult. You need to get them comfortable with knowing why they're doing this. Why am I suffering through this change? Frequently. When resources are unproductive, which they frequently are, as you saw from the Standish report, and when failure rates on projects are high. That's why people tend to go to the agile noun approach for a company. You need to change the focus from concurrent phases rather than doing things sequentially. Minimize the documentation as the paper pile shows over in the picture. You need to focus on what brings you the biggest bang for the buck. The documentation thing is a particularly nuisance ridden because if you're a bank or an insurance company, a financial institution, there are rules you have to follow with regard to the documentation. So doing projects with minimal documentation means you need to be clever and design your program so that it will give you more time, but it will also take care of the regulatory issues that you have to comply with. More dedicated teams, meaning people working on one thing at a time. Empower your individuals. They're fixed duration sprints. Again, this is the agile noun. It's a technique, a process where you produce modular functionality. For example, as an IT project, you may have functionality to be able to access a database as part of a broader scheme of things. and you have the customer on the team to avoid the problem of not knowing what the goal is because the customer can't articulate it and you don't understand or have the time to anticipate what they may need in the future. This enables the customer to learn daily as you go through things and for you to interface with the customer frequently. And for the Agile noun, let me give you a picture of what that looks like. It's a series of what's called sprints. So here's an image that I, again, like to use as a metaphor. And I'd like you to pay particular attention. A sprint is one package for one project for one functionality. Watch what happens at the handoff. You can see some of them are quite good, some of them not so good. So each team represents a different. You can see here one team didn't hand off so well. And so the difficulty is with sprints, when you do this in an agile, the noun way, what happens is you need more coordination and more empowerment and more anticipation so that that handoff is far smoother and more efficient and effective. Agile records, minimize them, keep them electronic. For tracking, for those of you who worry about metrics, KPIs, things like that, you need to simplify that. You still need to measure the people who I've seen doing Agile, the noun projects, have come up with clever ways to be able to give themselves some data points, but to lighten the footprint probably by 50%. So far more time goes to the product and far less time goes to the documentation and the reviews. And sharing tacit knowledge, that's a long story. I'll have another video about that one. And to be a learning organization, which is the sharing of tacit knowledge. How do you know what lessons have been learned, the mistakes that were made, for example, in Bangalore, if you have an office in Sao Paulo, or if you have an office in Beijing, how do the guys in Ho Chi Minh City know that this particular customer had these kinds of problems articulating their needs? So the key to all of this, again, is communications, but it needs to be done in a quick and efficient way. And lastly, an agile culture starts with leadership. As I said, you need to feel like a safe and secure member of a tribe, to go back to our earlier upbringings. Hungry to learn and share, those are the kinds of people you want in an agile organization. They need downtime to think. You can't be doing 10 hours a day, phone ringing, text messaging, emails, meetings, and such. You need some downtime. Creativity every day. Creativity is cooked into the process. The more of it you get, the better, which means that some of this won't work. You will make mistakes. There will be failures. They should not be criticized. And change is invigorating. People who want to come to work every day and say, I sure hope it wasn't like yesterday. Anyway, that's agile, the adjective or adverb, and becoming more agile as an organization. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, my name is Thomas. Thanks.